The Broncos defense has been passing with flying colors so far this season, but what grade would you give the Denver Broncos offense through the first 12 weeks of the NFL season as they enter their bye week? Is Vance Joseph coaching his way into a much bigger opportunity in the very, very near future? And is Bo Nix, after his performance against the Kansas City Chiefs, starting to peak at potentially just the right time down the backstretch of this NFL season? All things to come on today's rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. While you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube channel. You can find us at Denver Sports 1043 on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're watching us on X or Facebook Live, we love you. We appreciate you. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on those post notifications so that you never miss a moment with us. Tons to get into today, and welcome in for not the first time, but the first time in a long time here on the show. Friend of the station, friend of the program, number 69 on the field, number 1 in your heart, Mark Schlereth. Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I haven't been on in a long time because I was in New York, but the benefit of getting fired, I can be with you now. So
that is true.
So
that
now
is true.
I get opportunities.
Nobody is benefiting more from your calendar opening up than me.
Yeah,
I guess.
Right, exactly. Tuck my tail between my legs, come back to Colorado, and be on your show. It's awesome to be with you. Thank you.
It is amazing how things work out in your favor sometimes. Well, Mark, I think it's fair to say that the way that this Broncos season has kind of shot out of a cannon to start 2025 is at a minimum maybe a little bit better than we thought it might go. I think there was a lot of hope and optimism and speculation based on the end of 2024 with the Denver Broncos, with how Bo Nix and Sean Payton started to find a rhythm and find a groove. And it may have started, especially offensively, on a little bit of a down note. You know, they lose 2 of their first 4 games of the season, both of which were in walk-off fashion in the first 3 weeks of the year. And the offense seems to kind of sputter. Bo Nix maybe has some regression when it comes to a footwork standpoint, or certainly his comfort in the pocket. And yet, as the Broncos go into their bye week, Mark, they're tied for the best record in the NFL, the number 1 seed in the AFC. And it feels like the runway is completely in front of them at this point in a way that maybe even some of the more optimistic people here in town might not have thought it would be.
Yeah, I just think this is so interesting. I've been thinking about it a ton, just in regards to this offense that you mentioned. We all knew coming into the season that the Broncos defense was going to be legit, right? We all knew that they were going to be a top-notch, top-level defense. And so I look at that and said, okay, that was something we knew. And we thought, hey, listen, sophomore slump, potentially, what's going to happen? We thought there was room for advancement with Bo Nix. He was phenomenal his rookie year. And as you mentioned, toward the end of last season, I think they were 5-5. And then they went on a run at the end of the season where Bo Nix started playing really well. So we thought it was just going to be like, can you piggyback off of that success you had at the end of the season? And obviously the inconsistencies on the offensive side of the ball were something we talked a ton about, even going into last week after that Raiders game, going, man, this offense was horrible. There's been a regression. Bo Nix's feet are all over the place. He's been inaccurate and all these things. And I started thinking about what is the kind of overall thought process of Sean Payton? Because in my career, Richie, just the answer, whenever we struggled on offense, the answer was always simplify. Make it simple, right? There's too much on the plate. Guys are making mistakes. There's penalties. This team was one of the top penalty teams in all of football. So that's always been kind of my thought process. And one thing that Sean says all the time is he's like, every game is its own kind of entity. How are we going to win this game? But I really think, as I look at this season overall, I think that Sean knows he can lean on his defense and he can win games. And I think he knows he loves the schematic aspect of, out scheming teams for victories. And what they've been able to do in the fourth quarter has been amazing.
Right.
But I really think part of the process for them is to say, hey, I know we can win games during the regular season. And I know we could simplify and probably be better as an offense, but that's not going to win us a world championship. And I think this whole process has been, how are we going to be at peak efficiency on the offensive side of the ball where we can have multiple things to beat you from a schematic standpoint. We're not going to do that by simplifying. We're going to do that by continuing to grind and keeping the entirety of the playbook open and working our way into perfection that way, so that when we get in the playoffs, it won't be another Buffalo situation where we get beat 31-7, where we'll have everything at our disposal. So saying, I'm leaning on the fact that we're going to be great on the defensive side of the ball, and we're going to be a work in progress offensively. And hopefully by the time we hit the playoffs, we are operating and orchestrating as an offense at peak efficiency with multiple things that we can do. And that's just kind of like, as I've looked at it, and I keep thinking, hey, man, they're going to simplify this. There's going to be less of a menu in the run game. There's going to be less motions or less formations or less personnel groupings. And none of that has been true.
Right.
They've continued to press that way. So it makes me think that, hey, I know that I'm going to be a playoff team. So now let's make sure that we can win a championship. Let's become a championship level team. And I think that's where Sean Payton has basically got us all fooled. Like he's continued to press that way and saying that this is like, simplifying is not going to be good enough to win us a championship. We have to be multiple when we get there.
So in a way, some of the thought process and the decision making from Sean Payton's perspective that can come across outwardly as stubbornness, arrogance, resistance to kind of bend and mold with the personnel that you have and the scheme you're trying to deploy is maybe coming from a place of, I'm not going to lose sight of the forest through the trees. I'm not going to play on rookie mode against a 3-8 Washington Commanders team so that we can look good there if it's not going to help us in the wild card round against the Baltimore Ravens or the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. Or the Chargers. I'm not going to kneecap myself so that I can stare eye to eye with you if that makes everyone feel more comfortable. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. I was like, I'm not going to worry about the criticism. I'm not going to worry about what the non-experts think. I'm going to worry about what I think is the best for my football team and what I know we'll have to have come playoff time against really good football teams. And you're going to have to be more balanced. You're going to have to be more explosive on the offensive side of the ball. You're going to have to be able to be more, more multiple on the offensive side of the ball when you get to the playoffs. I mean, that's going to happen. And so if you can lean on the defense here early and continue to kind of hone the offense and become, I think the biggest thing is just less mistakes. And normally, like I said, the easiest way to create fewer mistakes is to simplify, so I have less confusion.
Right.
But what he's saying is that's not going to win me a championship.
Yeah.
What's going to win me a championship is being multiple and us learning how to be multiple. And in learning how to do that and in doing it enough time, then eventually the mistakes will be limited. And I think that's what Sean Payton is basically telling us without telling us, because, he's going to get to the podium and say my run game was good enough. It was good enough. And this,
And that mentality is opposite of what you in your playing career ultimately achieved 3 Super Bowl victories with. With you guys, it really was, hey, we'll run the same damn run play 2 or 3 times in a row on any given drive. And it's your job to stop us. And more often than not, you're not going to. And we don't have to be incredibly multiple. We don't have to have all of these different smoke and mirrors, bells and whistles, because ultimately we're going to out physical you, and that's our superpower. So is it essentially Sean Payton banking on achieving the same result just with a different engine or driver to get there than maybe what teams or champions in past have accomplished?
Yeah. I think the interesting thing, and I have a relationship with Sean and have sat down with him multiple times and just had football discussions. And like, he loves the strategy behind it. He loves that kind of game within the game. And, and he wants to have his team prepared for any situation. Like, we can morph into whatever we need to morph into to win a football game. There's always going to be staples, right? There's always going to be certain plays you like to run in certain situations. There's always going to be those things. But yeah, I played on teams that were like, we're going to line up and we're going to do what we do. And we may use a different formation or different personnel grouping, but we're running a handful of 6 plays, and we're going to run them a ton of times, right? We're going to run them with different formations, but we will run them over and over and over again and make you stop them. And when you adjust, like if we hit outside zone and we hit it outside in the, in the front side C gap, and we hit it and hit it and hit it and hit it. And eventually you start overplaying it. Now all of a sudden we cut it back to the backside, to the front side A gap. And then all of a sudden we'll hit one where we're like, okay, now let's get into our split zone stuff, right? So we're running front side, we're motioning a tight end across, he's cutting the backside end, and we're trying to get to that backside C gap. So you're playing off of how the defense starts to play you. So it's one or two plays, run out of multiple formations, run out of multiple personnel groupings, but we're running the same damn thing over and over. It may look a little bit different to you.
Yeah.
And then we're getting the way you play it. And now we're saying, okay, now they're really overplaying everything. So let's slow play it a little bit and get the backside cutback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how we did things. But I think Sean, and having talked to Sean so many times about just football in general, man, he's always thinking about like what I can do to help my guys out, what I can do to mitigate potential disaster, but what we can do to be our best on a consistent basis. And he's a damn good football coach. And that's the other thing. You talk to guys, and with him, this is the first guy that I've ever talked to that said, what do we have to do to win this game?
Yeah.
And if that is, hey man, our defense isn't going to allow more than 13 this weekend. Okay, so some of that is what do we have to work on?
Mm-hmm.
So hey, let's work on this, and it may not reap us the most overall points possible,
right?
But it's going to be something that benefits us down the road, and it's fascinating. I'll give you a quick story. I was calling a game between the Rams and the Giants, and the Rams were killing everybody out of bunch formations. Well, bunch, which is you get like tight end and two wide receivers, or wide receiver, tight ends, or whatever, but
closely aligned in the formation,
right? Yeah, and so they were running everything out of that. They were running front side, run game. They were running reverses out of that. They were running their passing game out of that, like everything, and they were cutting people up in this. And so they're playing the Giants at home, and I got this whole package. They're three bunch formation package. I did all this telestration, and we're going to run it during the game, and it's freaking phenomenal. It's phenomenal stuff. Yeah. They came out in two tight solo and played the whole game that way. They never got into it. And a broadcasting mistake that I made was should have played it anyway. So this is what they've been having so much success doing. Yeah. Why are they not doing this?
Right.
Well, they knew to beat the Giants because they were a much better team than the Giants. And they were like, if we score 20, we're going to win. So let's work on the crap that we haven't worked on. Like, let's work on the stuff that we need work on.
In the same way that we talk about, you got to run the ball to set up the play action, to wear down a defense. You got to do that in the quarters 1 and 2 to reap the benefits in quarter 4. It's, hey, we've got to put in the work where we can in the early portion of a season or at the midway point of a season, because when we are on the backstretch of that and we're in a position where we know we're going to be a postseason contender, we need these things to be clicking and firing better than they were in week 4. And so you're kind of, it's like, it's paying your dues a little bit at that point. And I think grading the Denver Broncos as a team, obviously the defense is passing with flying colors.
Yeah.
Special teams is a little bit of a roller coaster, but I think you got an all-pro kick and punt returner in Marvin Mims, who hasn't arguably had a better stretch of games to prove his worth than some of the games that he missed. When you saw how the lack of dynamic playmaking ability, the lack of explosiveness, and the overall effectiveness of the special teams unit without Marvin Mims certainly was enough to put my pen to paper and say, okay, maybe I'm not going to give that guy such a hard time or try to diminish that portion of the game. But when it comes to the offense, I think that's an interesting exercise to try to go through and grade through 11 weeks of the season where we think this Broncos offense, position group by position group, has kind of graded out. Andrew Mason, our senior Broncos writer at DenverSports.com, did exactly that. And these were the grades that he came up with across the board. He gave Bo Nix at the quarterback position a B- overall in the season. The running back room as a whole gets a B. Wide receivers, keeping that B average, B- average there with a B-. The offensive line, which I think has been really one of the more consistent portions of the Broncos offense over the last couple of years, gets the only A among their cohorts, and then the tight end group bringing up the rear with a C-. Mark, are there any grades there that stood out to you as maybe too high, maybe too low, or is Mace's thermometer insert it in whichever end you would like.
Yes.
Reading a proper temperature.
No, I think he's all over it. I think the offensive line has been really good. There's always going to be aspects of, parts of the offensive line that I think a lot of people like. I'll look at it more in depthly or with more critical an eye, because you always kind of tend, as a player or former player, you tend to watch the game kind of through a straw hole,
sure,
through the lens with which you played. So, there have been early some mental mistakes and some breakdowns that bother you. But that's part of today's game more than it was probably in my day, because with all the different motion and all the different formations and all the different things you do as an offense, anytime you move a player from a strength to, from a strong to right to strong left, and you motion people, you get movement from linebackers and safety rotation. And what ends up happening to you is, let's say you're running, let's say you're running a strong side play and you motion over, and all of a sudden the safety drops down. Now you got to sit there and think, as an offensive line in the middle of a cadence, okay, are we combo blocking to that front side backer? Or now all of a sudden, are we going to the safety? Are we pushing out to the safety? Because can that receiver that's in the slot get to the safety, or do we have to take him over and turn him loose? And so you have to have those things, you have to have those things predetermined. And when the guys bounce around and move, sometimes they're in a position where it's like, oh, I think maybe, or I don't think. So it has to become one of those things where you have that kind of locked in. And sometimes what you see is, you see guys pushing to the front side, and you see the safety getting picked up by the receiver, and all of a sudden there's a free linebacker just running around making tackling practice, right? So some of those things, happen that bother me as I'm watching. But I think Mace is all over it. I think the Broncos' offensive line has probably been their best role, especially with the injury to Powers, and having the ability of being Palcho in there and play well. The tight end group has been probably the most disappointing from the standpoint of production.
Do you think that, because I agree with you, Mark, and that's where I was going to go next, is that's we talked about the top end of the class, in terms of the grades. At the bottom there with the tight end room, I think that's a consistent theme that carried over from last season. I think the tight end group as a whole, Troutman, Atkins, and the like, Lucas Kroll, kind of not being, from a playmaking perspective, what you look around the league and you see so many dynamic offenses taking advantage of: the Sam Laportas, the Mark Andrews, the Dallas Goddards, the Travis Kelce's, the Andre Gadsden's in LA, who's kind of shot out of a cannon for the Chargers, Brock Bowers within the division. I mean, you got three teams in your own division that all seem to possess prolific playmaking, dynamic tight ends as receiving threats. And the Broncos, really, since Julius Thomas walked out the door, just have not been able to replicate that kind of player within their offense. And I think that is what sparked so much speculation around the signing of Evan Ingram in free agency, paying him a decent chunk over a multi-year contract, and him kind of filling that joker role that we had been told so much about Sean Payton's offense and how important that chess piece on the board was for Sean to be able to do what he does. And I think that it's fair to say and speculate that at least through the first 11 weeks of the season, that hasn't really come to fruition yet. So do you think that the tight end room, being one of the lower graded, or the lowest graded in this case, room on the Broncos offense throughout the first portion of the season here, is that more of a failure of planning and execution in the way that role is being deployed? Is that more of a failure of the Sean Payton scheme not utilizing the personnel that they have? Or does it just come down to Evan Ingram as the player not being what he was billed to be, coming in as the leader of that room?
Yeah, I think more than anything for me, it's more of Evan Ingram maybe playing out of position. So there's really two types of tight ends in the league right now, right?
Okay.
There's what they call the Y, who is the main tight end, the inline guy that's got to be able to block, to hold an edge, not only in the run game, but also in pass protection. And then there's the F. And the F is the more movement guy in two tight end packages, right? So Evan is more of an F almost slot type of receiver. And you don't really have a why that truly threatens you in the pass receiving game and in the blocking game. And so I just think when I look at teams that are really well put together from the tight end position, like you talked about Bowers, right? Mayer is their second tight end who's a really damn good player.
The Chiefs have Noah Gray.
Right. Yep. So there's this combination of the two tight end package where both guys are threats as receivers and at least one of them can really block. And so then you get into a situation where you line up in those formations and the defense has to decide how we're going to play you. And the way we're going to play you most of the time, like, are we going to play you in base? Well, most teams won't play you in base. They'll play you in what they call big nickel. Okay. So instead of bringing in a corner to play nickel, you bring in a safety to play in that nickel slot. Well, now all of a sudden, I've got a slot receiver on a safety. That's a win for me.
Yeah.
Right. Or, hey man, if they do play actual nickel and it's a corner, well, now you got little people against my big people. I like my chances there. Right. I like in the run game. I like my chances there. And so, and then if you play actual base where you have three linebackers, well, now I can spread you out because I have two tight ends that can catch the ball and they can beat you in one-on-one coverage. And one of those guys is going to get locked up on linebacker. And so I think from a personnel standpoint, we just don't have that second piece in the equation from the standpoint of a guy that can really block, but can really run routes and can really get open at the quote unquote Y. And Evan Ingram to me is an F. And I think so. I just don't think we quite have the balance there. But you addressed, you know, you got a new contract for Benito. You got a new contract for Cooper a year before. You got a new contract for Zach Allen. You know, you get
PS2, DJ Jones.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've spent your money there. And you can't do everything every offseason. So I think that's the one place that they're kind of just missing.
Quickly here, a couple more things before we shift gears. The running back room in Andrew Mason's midseason grades or bye week grades for the Denver Broncos received the second highest grade among the units with a flat B. But I think that's an interesting grade when you start to break it down, because if we're talking about the running back room as a group project, J.K. Dobbins, I think, was pretty clearly
he was an A+.
Yes, the one in the group chat that was doing all the work, getting all the grades, and everybody else was kind of just happy to tag along and speak their part when they could. Well, J.K. Dobbins is now out. He's transferred to a different class, and this group that got a B through the first portion of the season before the bye week certainly looks different than it does now. What's your level of confidence in this Broncos running back room to at least reasonably approach or have an opportunity to maintain the production that they had without J.K. Dobbins going forward?
Yeah, well, it's not good because I haven't seen it. J.K. Dobbins was the one guy that you could rely on from just a pure running standpoint. You know, the pace of play, the pace of entering the hole, the ability to cut back, the ability to read what we're doing. Like, he was the one guy to me that really provided that. Like, I think RJ Harvey has become a very valuable asset, but it's not so much running the ball. His value has been catching the ball out of the backfield. His value has been matching up in the passing game because he's done that exceptionally well. But the running, the aspect of running it, and it's a feel thing. It's that's where, going back to our earlier part of this conversation, that's where he would benefit from simplifying to where he's just running, 2 or 3 concepts over and over and over again so he could get a feel for it. But Sean likes to have a large menu of run plays, right?
Yeah.
And that's where J.K. Dobbins, having been in different offenses and had, different coaches, that's where he benefited because he could run anything, pretty, exceptionally well. And so I think you've got to figure out who your kind of bell cow runner is. I know you're going to kind of divvy up the reps, but who's going to be the main guy to carry the rock? And so you don't lose the receiving aspect of RJ Harvey. Like, I thought last week, I thought Mims looked better in the return game than I'd seen him all year. And I think one of the reasons is he comes back and he's probably less involved in the offense.
Yeah.
Because he's coming back from injury and they're saying, hey, we need you in this aspect and we need to kind of put you on a pitch count. And I thought he looked more dynamic returning than I'd seen him all year returning because he had a much bigger, more stuff on his plate from the standpoint of being a viable receiver. So sometimes I think you don't want to overload RJ Harvey as a rookie and take away, by giving him more run responsibility, take away what he's been doing in the passing game.
It is time to hit the turn, presented by the Birdie Bar, Louisville's premier indoor golf bar experience. Check them out online or on Instagram at thebirdie.bar. Pause for a little piece of production there, Mark Schlereth.
Okay.
But I do want to shift gears very briefly here to the conversation of Vance Joseph, who obviously was a head coach here with the Broncos a number of years ago. There was a lot of factors going in to the where the Broncos were at as an organization at that time that I think negatively attributed to VJ's first crack at being a head coach. But he has since gone back into the coordinator pool with Arizona and now coming back here with Denver. And it really does feel like the Sean Payton and Vance Joseph side by side have a similar feel to the Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, right? Like you feel very equally confident in both coaches' speciality, and the way that they work alongside each other has the makeup of what you would attribute to a championship contender. In the case of the Kansas City Chiefs, it's been a dynastic, almost decade-long tenure for the two of them together. But I'm not 100% sure that Sean Payton and Vance Joseph will have the opportunity or maybe have the collective mindset to work in that same way for that same length of time. Do you think that we are entering perhaps the last 5 or 6 games of Vance Joseph's tenure as the defensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos because of the resume that he's put on paper over the last handful of seasons here in Denver?
I do. I absolutely do. And I said this on the radio show earlier this morning, I think it was this morning. I've heard Tennessee pop out a couple of different times, and I just called the game in Tennessee, but that it just seemed to be a name that was on the tip of a lot of people's tongues, and so it'll be interesting to see exactly the opportunity gets. Listen, they've been so good at building this defense and so good, and Vance Joseph put on a masterclass of shutting down Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City offense. And let's face it, there are going to be a lot of teams that are looking for that kind of defensive ability and to be able not only to put the game plan together, but then have your players execute it, which they do. And they're so multiple, Richie. They'll go from man to man to man to zone based on motions and everything else. And they do an exceptional job of coaching it up and having their players be able to respond and not make a lot of mental errors doing it. So I think that's a very viable thing. I think the other thing you would look at with Vance Joseph is when he got his opportunity here as the head coach of the Denver Broncos, he didn't get to choose his staff. And that's a recipe for disaster.
Sure.
So I think people are going to give him the benefit of the doubt and want Vance Joseph to have I think there will be teams that will offer him. I think he'll get an opportunity to be a head coach. The Spags thing is interesting. He was the head coach of the Rams for a couple of years. He was the interim head coach of the Giants, I think, in 2017. And he may just be in a point in his career where he's like, no, I like being Andy Reid's D coordinator. And we said this all the time, or I used to talk to my offensive line coach, Alex Gibbs, who is a legend, in the league as far as the godfather of the zone running game. That's what they always called him. And he had said to me, and we had these conversations where he didn't want to be anything but the best O-line coach in football. That's what he wanted to be. And so he's like, I don't want to be an offensive coordinator. I don't want to be I don't want to call play. I don't want to do any of that. I want to be the O-line coach, and I want to be the best at that. And I think sometimes you might hit your kind of Peter Principle level of incompetence and say, man, all I really want to do, and I can make a ton of money doing it, be the best D coordinator that I can be. And and I'm really good with where I'm at. And that's maybe where Spag's at. I don't think that's where Vance Joseph is. I think he'd like another bite of the apple.
I agree. I think when you look at the Tennessee Titans, who just drafted a rookie quarterback, number 1 overall, clearly have a hope and identity that they want to develop for the future, and then supplementing that, supporting a young quarterback with a good defense like Vance Joseph has shown that he's been able to coach, makes sense. You look at the New York Giants, another vacancy there as well, and that potentially puts an example out there where you could see Vance Joseph potentially take a head coaching opportunity in a big market like New York, who also has a young quarterback that they want to build around and defensive talent already established on their roster, while also potentially poaching another member of the Broncos coaching staff in Davis Webb as an offensive coordinator, somebody that Vance Joseph could then maybe turn to handle things on the offensive side of the ball, former player for the Giants, and somebody who's worked and been praised pretty highly for his contributions and his work with Bo Nix here in Denver. So it's going to be a fascinating kind of backstretch of the season here to see how it plays out, both here in Denver and across the league, as all of the pieces are starting to come together and the NFL playoff picture starts to become much more clear. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate everything you do over there in the morning with Stokely and Mike Evans, of course. Tune into you guys every day from 6 to 10. And now that your calendar's a little bit less full, maybe we'll have you back on the show again real soon.
All right, yeah. I'm not. It's not like I got anything to do.
No,
so, you know,
no. And if you know, and I will happily turn to you if I need help with any snow blowers, leaf blowers, any kind of lawn maintenance or home maintenance related device. You are my guy.
Yeah, I'm your go-to dude.
I love it, Mark. Thank you so much again for joining us. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your Thursday afternoon. We will catch you again tomorrow at noon for the next rundown.